And I will let you start because you seem very passionate about a certain point of this response that I have received.
Well, it reminds me of a similar experience I had with someone, and I think I've mentioned it briefly on the podcast before, where someone was talking about the definitions of words, which we obviously have a very dynamic definition, and someone turned around and literally wrote, and I still am baffled by it now, there is only ever one definition. And you can't just go changing the definition to suit you. And I was so confused because that's exactly what we do. That's how language progresses. Words are created by us, and then they have different definitions. You just look at all the slang that's come out over the last, I don't know how many years. Well, all years, really.
Selfie.
But like selfie.
Like the word was created because of the affordances that the technology, what, afforded us.
And even if we take it from a very not ecological view, you look at the dictionary, which they define as if you look at the dictionary, this is what these words mean. Um, the response is very simple. It's this thing, or this thing, or this thing. There are multiple definitions of all of it. How? So that was that. And then we have this.
Don't just, and that was that. So for me, when I said, I mean, I said this years ago now, meanings are in people, not words. And when I said this to Julia and Jeff in our conversation, they were discussing meanings are in people, not words, the relative nature of affordances, but through language, because affordances are action scaled, body scaled, etc., depending on the capabilities of the organism. And so words, language, the same thing. So when we say a word has a definition, that definition will differ depending on the person's context and the person's understanding and belief around other related elements. Even when you say a chair, what is a chair? Is it a table that you can sit on? Is it a desk you can sit on? Does it have to have four legs? Is it three legs, two legs? Maybe it's just got one really big leg. Maybe it's a stump. Like,
And is a stool a chair? Because it's
exactly.
something you can sit on. When I think of chair, it's something I can sit on, which means a table can be a chair.
Vsauce
Yeah.
did a video about this like 2 years ago.
Yeah. And I was thinking of I think it was food theory about soup and the definition of soup and how a
Hmm.
cereal is a soup.
Yep. All comes back to words don't mean something concrete. Meanings are in people, not words, because the words are relative to the person's experiences related to their learning. And so when I hear people discuss a term, a
Mm,
word, a
yeah.
phrase, it's relative to their experiences, which is why I'm apprehensive on people that disagree with the CLA. But it's also why I get frustrated, why, for context, CLA, constraints-led approach, which is also why I get frustrated by people saying, oh, it's old wine in new bottles. Because those three words, constraints-led approach, mean loads. There is a lot packaged into those three words. And there are lots of assumptions, ideas, beliefs, applications that are encompassed by the CLA, which are not seen in history. And that's what this comment that we are talking about refers to. I'm having a conversation with a person on LinkedIn, and they responded to a comment, and I'm going to respond to them after this, because I read the response as we were coming in. But yeah. So what are your other thoughts? Because yes, definition. Ooh, far more than one.
Yeah, and I think it leads on very nicely to the final point that was made, which I find like for me is a baffling experience to read that. The idea that science should be based on the origins, not on the interpretations. Yet
Hmm.
through the interpretations, we uncover more. If we just base everything on the original science, isn't that besides the point of the entire scientific process? That feels completely counterproductive to what scientists and researchers and the entire field is doing. That is exactly what the scientific field is about. It's researching, discovering, finding new things, learning new things. Otherwise, the brain is still going to be a water like thing.
Water thing.
I
Yes.
can't think of a water pump. There we go.
Yeah, I knew what you meant by the action. But
No, you
again,
didn't, because
meanings are in people, not words.
there's only one. No, no, there's one definition. I have to give you the actual definition, otherwise it doesn't work.
For context, those listening, I'm going to read out the last sentence so we've got a quote of what was said. Science should always focus on the origin and not on the secondary interpretations. And this, for me, it relates to the point that I'm making in a video that I've scripted that I might be out the week this comes out, maybe the week after, relating to the evidence. The evidence, the science, whatever you want to call it. There is evidence for what works and what doesn't work, but then there's evidence for why things might work. And the problem us as coaches and learners and educators have is that studies don't represent the real world.
No,
What academic studies do not translate to coaching because there are different levels, there are different people, there are different sports, there are different scales, there is different time lengths, there's far more constraints or far less constraints depending on the study. Like most studies are highly constrained. Or they're not constrained at all in the way that you are trying to manipulate to encourage whatever it is you're trying to do. So, if, for example, we get a study saying intervention one was better than intervention two, you could then say, okay, we should do intervention one. If you're coaching that test, if you're not coaching that test, then the study doesn't prove anything for what it is that you're doing. It gives you an idea, but the idea comes from the whys, and the whys is your interpretation of why intervention one was better than intervention two, which is how you can apply a volleyball study to a basketball practice. They're different sports. Take something very, very, I would say, concrete inside of science. You can't train visual reaction time separate from a sport specific skill. Contextual inference or training in sport specific context or just training into context or making it representative practice, whatever word you want to put there. If you train something out of context, the transfer is extremely low. So
mm,
if you were to get someone to do some reaction training in whatever, whether it's pushing buttons or trying to watch some ball on a wall, and then you say, right, okay, now put that into your sport, it doesn't transfer. And we have loads of examples to say it doesn't transfer. But there's nothing inside of trampoline, gymnastics, table tennis, research that I can find that talks about it. Because they don't need to do it in those sports. Because when you look at the why, it doesn't work. Similar with brain training. It's why so many people have been fined for false marketing about brain training because it doesn't transfer. If you get really good at brain training app game, doesn't mean you can actually do other things because you're
just
training
means you're really good at the brain training app game,
exactly.
and that's it.
And so the origin, the science origin, if my meaning of what they are saying is correct, the science origin of the test, the intervention that was used, that is what we should focus on. Again, science should always focus on the origin and not the secondary interpretations. If we're focusing on the intervention and not the why the intervention worked, then we still have millions and billions of tests to do with all of the contexts that we haven't tested. And I would also argue it's impossible because if you're trying to train someone over, say, a year, and you want to work out what the periodized plan would be most effective for an ADH boy that's 13 years old, that's doing all of these different sports and has all of this context inside of school, and then you have a 12-year-old non-binary individual that's got loads of other different experiences. How do you test those two different people? What study would you do for that? I don't think you can have a origin science, an intervention to say, yep, this is the best way forwards, because we're all dynamic, which they accept previously in their comment that dynamic systems is complex and is being studied. And I'm like, okay, fine, but you need the interpretations, the secondary interpretations, the why did this work to be able to
And the
transfer it to
different,
anything else.
because every single time they do a new study or they try something new, they're going from a different context. From just as simple as having different researchers look at different things, focus on the differing information that's available to them, they will get slightly different results, and those results will link back to the original paper. So you can always go back to the original paper, but it progresses the science forward. It progresses our understanding because we have additional context, additional action capabilities, additional constraints that are afforded to us all from it being different. And
Hmm.
yet, and yet, ah. So when I hear people go, no, there's only one definition, or there's only one way, or we have to go back to the origin science, I'm like, you are cutting so much of the rich experiences, the dynamics of how we work and exist in the world, right off to its smallest possible number, which is very unscientific.
Yes.
Usually it's large sample sizes.
This is where it comes back to the what is meant by the CLA. What is meant by the constraints-led approach? Because I feel lots of people see the constraints-led approach being discussed a lot because it's becoming somewhat of a buzzword. And quite a
Mm.
few people that I've seen discussing it don't quite grasp some of the nuances that are discussed in the literature and are discussed at maybe a higher level, a coach developers level. Um, and so individuals that see that content go, oh, yeah, we've been doing that before. And a perfect example of that is through this comment, I've just grabbed some points, and it relates to what you were just saying. Towards an intended movement goal, the constraints being added to encourage a intended movement goal. Well, that's a misunderstanding of what the constraints-led approach is, because the constraints-led approach is encouraging movement exploration for self-organization towards a goal, not a movement goal.
Mm.
It's not a, we want you to move like this. It's a, we want you to get that outcome. I
Yeah,
want you to get the ball from here to there as fast as you can. Not, I want you to cricket bowl the ball, or I want you to baseball pitch it, or I want you to softball pitch it. It's a, I want you to get the ball from here to there as fast as you can.
yeah,
There's not a movement goal, there's an outcome goal.
yeah,
And those are drastically different they would encourage drastically different constraints inside of practice because if it's a cricket ball, your arm's got to be straight. If it's a baseball pitch, it doesn't have to be straight. If it's a softball pitch, it's got to be underarm. Like they 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 changed the movement solution hugely. And
this kind of this to bring it into like the businessy context and outside of the physical movement, it reminds me of what I do with AI because often the goal is get the thing, this very specific, hyper-specific thing done, versus how I've trained it and given, of course, there are constraints that are just there, so we have to respond to them and understand them to effectively use them. You have it going, cool. I don't want to be told what to do here. I don't want the answer. Like, I don't want the one answer. I want to explore like the environment that I'm in, the discussions, the thoughts, my own kind of processes of how I come to that decision. It's a similar thing. It's that journey of discovery versus put your hand here, whack it. It's that extra space. That's how it feels. That's probably the best way of like if we strip the language, it's the space to explore, the space, the space, the space to play, the space to just go, here's a thing. You're doing this thing. What does that look like? And just to go through that experience.
Solution space.
Yeah.
There are multiple solutions in this space. Try and find a solution that works for the goal, and then try and find another solution that works for the goal, and then find a different solution because there are multiple solutions. As Bernstein in his original research, when we look at blacksmiths, there is variability in every solution, but they can still hit that same spot with a blacksmith hammer. It's just there's variability with the movement. And so it's not a movement goal. So I'm going to, when I respond, question that, what they mean by movement goal. It's not a movement goal. It's a goal, an outcome goal. Can you hit the hammer in the same spot? Can you throw the ball at that target really fast? Can you, in the business world, get an email out,
Mm.
marketing process through, page up? Like you could get a web page up very quickly. You don't have to do a follow a step-by-step process to get it up. You could do it in lots of different ways with lots of different platforms, with lots of different copywriting, with lots of different images and branding and the rest of it. And so the goal could be as broad as get a sales page up.
Yeah.
Once you've done that, you have successfully achieved the goal that we set. Now, if you want to add another goal to it, I want to make my conversions on the sales page 10%. Well, again, there's multiple ways you can do that. And that's where you would explore the solution space. Would you add more images? Would you change the colors? Would you adapt the copywriting? Would you use a different platform? There are all different things you can make changes to, but you won't know what the right answer is because there isn't a right answer. The conversion may go up with you making a page looking really, really, really 90s because that might be your audience. Your audience might be something like Zotero, and you look at Zotero's website and you think, what is this? It's from the 90s. This is awful. Like, please round some edges. I don't like those squared images, but it converts well because that's what the audience is looking for.
I thought Zotero had improved their website.
They've improved the app and the website looks a little bit cleaner, but it's still very 90s, especially their forum. I can see you're exploring their website now to check
Oh,
it.
oh, yeah. Let's just hide that. Let's just not look at that. Okay. Yeah, that's very 90s.
But it converts and does well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it achieves their goal. So yeah, so towards an intended movement goal, I think is a misunderstanding or my misunderstanding of what they mean by those words,
Mm.
towards what the constraints-led approach is trying to encourage. That's point one. I have four. Second point, the constraints-led approach tolerates errors of what not to do. I'm not a fan of the word tolerates. Um, and even though they discuss amplification of errors, which is what my point was, of what not to do. It's not about what not to do and what to do. It's about what you can do.
It's about doing. Like
Yeah,
the whole thing is doing,
it's about
which I
exploring
think
the
is
space.
yeah, it there is such a like the entire message is delivered very as a binary, as there is a right thing to do, as there is only one solution, which completely ignores the entire point of CLA, which is like that way. Bye.
Hmm.
No, no, because it's not binary. It is it is completely and utterly there's not one solution. That's the point. It's a space for solutions. It's a solution space. I like solution space. I'm stealing that. It's a solution space. for you to explore all the possible solutions, not one, because there are more than one.
but also solutions that are ineffective. And when this is where amplification of errors, so tolerates errors of what not to do. I think the what not to do, I'm a little bit stuck on, and I'm going to use Rob Gray's baseball study example for this. He had two groups. One group was given the goal, hit the ball back to fair play. If you imagine Wii Sport, if you ever played Wii Sport, if you see a foul ball, i.e., you've hit it to the left or the right, you've failed the goal. It's an error. And so one group's goal was to hit it back into fair play. The other group's goal was far more variable, so there was more random goals to it, but it included hit the ball as far left as you can, as far right as you can, which is deliberately making people hit it wrong.
Mm,
So there are errors there. But the errors are defined by the game's constraints, not the practice constraints. The game being the sport game, i.e., you have to hit the ball forwards into the field. But the movement solution, that's not an error because they're achieving what the practice wanted. You hit the ball as far right as you could. What does that do to the potential movement opportunities moving forwards? Well, if they know how to hit the ball as far right as they can, if the pitch is further out to the right and they need to try and hit the ball as far left as they can to hit the space, well, now they've explored hitting the ball as far left as they can from different pitches. So if the
mm,
pitch is to the right, they can adapt their movement solution to hit the ball into play from a far right pitch. Opposite, if it's a far left pitch, i.e., very close to their body, and they're used to hitting the ball to far right, they can hit it into play. And so it means that the pitches, even if the pitches are dodgy or they're deliberately dodgy because the pitcher is trying to make the person miss the ball, it's kind of their point. Like, if the pitch is less good, less effective for, or more difficult for the batter to hit, if the batter has explored variable solutions, some of which are extreme, they are more likely to be able to adapt to the solution because they've explored those errors. They're not
mm,
errors, they're exploring a movement space. And so what happened in the study? Well, the random group with errors got better. They hit the ball more, they missed the ball less, and they hit more home runs. So hit the ball further, hit the ball more, and missed the ball less. And so you're like, well, that was pretty effective and tolerates errors. I
mm.
don't think they're tolerating errors. I think they're encouraging movement solutions, and it's not for what not to do, but for what is capable. And again, it could sound like semantics, and it maybe is semantics because I've misunderstood what this person is saying.
Mm,
But it drastically changes the way that you would construct practice. The way you would design practice drastically changes. I don't know of many people, and this was related to the points earlier on, I don't know of many people that would ask someone to deliberately do things wrong, like in tennis. I don't know of many coaches that have deliberately said, hey, hit the ball on your side first. Why would you hit the ball on your side first? Because the whole point of tennis is to hit the ball over the net. Why was he asked to do that? This is Novak Djokovic, arguably one of the best tennis players in the world, or of all time. Why was he asked to hit the ball on his side first? Why do you reckon? Amplification of errors? Well, yeah, but what is the error? The error is the sport. Okay, so what are we actually doing? Exploring a movement space. Why would we explore that movement space? Well, it encourages the person to hit the ball down. Where can that help? Well, it helps them smash the ball down when the ball is up
mm,
high. So that is a shot that could be used in practice in a real game. So you would actually want to hit the ball really close to your feet, but
mm,
also positioning the racket above the ball. So if the ball has bounced up high and you need to be able to adjust for the high bounce in the back side of the court, the front side of the court, or wherever, you're used to hitting the ball down. And so you
mm.
can hit the ball down so it doesn't fly up in the air. Again, solution space. And yeah, I could give
This
some other examples, but I'll let
this
you.
reminds me of a really cool of a situation that happened a couple of days ago with a couple of people, and it was my son was asked to stack plates up in the cupboard, which the cupboard has now been moved, as we spoke about previously, to make it easier. Um, and the relationship that occurred between myself and my other half, and the expectations on Aiden, and Tori was like, "Oh, put this here. Like that's not stacked properly. That's not stacked properly." And I'm just like going, "Oh yeah, I noticed that the bigger plates were like at the top, so a little bit more unstable. So what I perceived as the issue was the plates. And it wasn't until Tori went, no, 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 this goes here and here and here. I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't see that's a problem. Like for me, I didn't see that as a thing needing fixing. Oh, but if this is the thing, then it gets harder to take the plates out. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah. And it was really funny because the interaction was, no, you know what's wrong here. You know what's wrong here. And I'm sat there going, I don't anymore. And so if I don't, and I
Yep.
and I literally spoke, I said, I don't actually know what's wrong here. Oh, but there's a right way of doing it. I'm like, okay, what's the right way of doing it? Because I don't even know. So if I don't know, and I am the adult, how can Hayden know what's going on? And so I'm like, okay, what is it you're looking for? And it's like, oh, this. Oh, right, cool. I wouldn't have even done that
And
because there is variability in the cupboard.
exactly, I'm the same with the bowls in the cupboard. I have a preferred way to stack the bowls,
Mhm.
but someone else has a different preferred way to stack
Mm,
the bowls
mm.
for different reasons. Neither of them are wrong.
Correct. Yeah,
They're,
exactly.
so we have a big bowl. So these are like dinner bowls. They're not like pudding dessert bowls. They're like dinner bowls. There is a big one, there is a medium-sized one, and then there are two smaller ones. The two
Mhm.
smaller ones are white. They're the ones that I use. The medium-sized one is like a dark green, and that's the one my sister uses. But the bigger bowl is always at the bottom because both of us
Yeah.
put it at the bottom. However, whoever's done the drying up, you can tell by which bowls are on the top. I put the smaller bowls on top of the medium bowls, not because they're smaller, but because I use the smaller ones. And she puts the medium bowl on top of the smaller ones because she uses the medium bowl. So,
Uh,
but like, I'm not fussed that there's a
mm,
medium bowl on top of the small bowl because they stack. They don't fall off. But
oh,
it's
cool.
annoying. But it's annoying for me
Mm.
that I have to take a bowl out to get the bowl that I want.
And I think because often Tori is the one who's doing the food, like dishing up food. And so for Tori, it's more frustrating to have to try and get to the back of the cupboards and pull out the square plates, or the kids are rather bombastic when they're making their food and crash and smash and bang. So it's the square plates that needed to be separated. So we have square like lunch plates, and then we have circular lunch plates, and they're always fighting over the square ones, so much so that they've all been smashed apart from a few.
We have square ones, but we're all adults, so we don't tend to smash stuff much anymore on purpose.
Yeah, yeah. Well, not on purpose, just they drop them because they're not in the position that Tory would say, well, it needs to go there, because in that way they're less likely to break to reduce that probability of it breaking. And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I didn't see that. All I saw was the fact that the plates were in the wrong order. And it just, that right there is the point. Which is
Yeah.
right. None of both of them. None of them and both of them. Which is what I said. I was like, but you're not wrong, and neither am I.
Which
But
goes down to the interpretation of the
mm,
science.
mm,
Like there's multiple right ways here, but
mm,
multiple wrong ways here, depending on the relative nature of
mm,
the solution for
mm,
the person doing it, whether it's my sister trying to get her bowl, me trying to get my bowl, my mum looking at it going, no, that's not in the right order because it has to be in size order. So we've all got different orders, but for different reasons. And in your household, the same thing. You've all got
mm.
different people that have different relationships to how the bowls are stacked.
Yeah.
Um, now, is there anything else you wanted to add to that one about
I don't
errors?
think.
No. So this next one, you never train the right solution to become the best. Um, I feel like the never never train the right to become the best. It's just is emphasizing again there's a right way to train,
Mm,
and then there is a best that we are looking for.
no, I'm looking to train.
Hmm. Improve, yes.
Hmm,
Best, I'm not so sure. And the idea that there's a right way to train, I think again misunderstands the CLA because it's not about. I mean, it's about variability. It's about randomness, exploring solution spaces. There isn't a right. There is a goal that we're trying to achieve, but there isn't a right. And again, it could sound semantical with language, but it drastically changes the way that you would apply yourself inside of practice. And a best? What does a best mean? Like, if there is a best solution, that's going to change with every movement, just like I explore with the blacksmith hammer. Like, Bernstein's blacksmith hammer. And it's not that this is old wine in new bottles. It's not an old approach. Oh, we've done this before and we're just re-bottling it because we've always encouraged people to we've always guided people and encouraged people to do certain things. I'm like, yes, encourage, yes, correct. Guide, yes, correct. But why?
mm,
Why? Are we guiding for a best technique? No. Are we encouraging for a best technique? No. Are we encouraging for a, to use their word, intended movement goal? No. We have an idea of what we would like them to move like because of certain reasons. Those reasons, if those reasons are not significant enough for the performer, they won't adjust the way that they move. Because if that ain't broke, don't fix it.
mm.
And as the optimal movement myth paper, actually, have you read that one? I realized as I was saying this, I'm like, yeah, I don't think you've read this one. It came out actually, it was shared in the WhatsApp group. Did you see it? It was
Possibly. I
a
didn't read
fairly
it.
longish paper. It's like it was published 2025.
Oh, well, I'll
Um,
go look at that afterwards.
but it was optimized. I'm just trying to find it now, so that I can reference it. Um, uh, Optimizing movement. It is the optimal movement solution myth. So the myth of optimality in human movement science is the name of the paper. It was published March 20, well, on ResearchGate anyway, March 2025.
The
Uh,
myth of optimality.
Optimality in human movement science. Yes,
Found it.
cool. And yeah, so the idea that there is an optimal movement for humans, it's false. It's a myth. We don't look for optimal movements. Actually, I think I have a quote in the paper. Yep, here it is. Actual human performance is not optimal, but adaptive, and is characterized by intermittent, contextual, and dynamically entangled processes across multiple scales. And so when we look back at the words used by this responder, never train the right to become the best, or like we never train the right to become the best. Them trying to encourage that there's no right way to become the best, which, yeah, but you're assuming that there is a right and that there isn't an optimal, that there is just adaptive movements that we're encouraging people to explore. And so I don't disagree with them in that we shouldn't be training an optimal movement, but the assumption that there is an optimal movement makes me believe that there is that they are focused on the better way, which
Mm,
obviously is what we're trying to do, but the better way in a highly constrained environment. And that's where I feel like the long paragraphs that they sent lack detail,
mm.
which is what I'm going to follow up on. But yeah, what are your thoughts on optimality and human movement?
It sounds lovely.
It goes
And
into quite a lot of
completely,
depth.
and I'm looking forward to reading it. But it's when you start looking at the optimal solution, the question is for what? Because there are multiple optimal solutions. What is the optimal solution for marketing your work? Well, that depends. What are you looking for? Sales? Well, the most optimal way of making sales for me would be talking to people because when I talk to people, there is that relationship that's being built, etc., etc. Okay. Well, what about a digital product? Well, no one's going to want to sit on a call with me for a digital product conversation. Like, it, does it do what I want? Well, do I know what I want? Like, is this something I'm aware of? Am I aware there is a solution? Like, there's all of that, like multiple layers, and if I want to make sales, then I can just use persuasive language and use manipulative language, manipulative being very
Encouraging.
well. Like,
I
I can
think
use that instead.
I would use encouraging language.
Mm, yeah,
You're using language to encourage a particular behavior because that's
yeah,
what coaches are doing.
yeah.
Sales are doing it. It's the reasons why you're encouraging them to do it that can be deemed as manipulative, but it depends
Mm,
on your understanding and your thoughts behind the sale. Like, if you're
yeah,
manipulating someone into doing something that isn't best of interest, then yeah, manipulating. But if you're doing something to encourage them to do something that is best for their interest, or you believe it's best for their interest, then it isn't manipulating. But what is what your interpretation of best of their interest is will obviously change. The scam
yeah,
artists are probably not thinking that they're being that manipulating because, well, you're seeing the same thing everyone else is seeing and you're falling for it.
yeah.
So,
That's optimal.
yeah. But yeah, so I don't like optimality or assuming optimality inside of movement, mainly because if there's an optimal movement, most of the time when we're discussing it in, well, most places, you've taken a snapshot and you're
Mhm.
looking at the things that you can measure, i.e., where the angle was, etc., 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 to find an optimal movement. And then you go, right, that is the best way to move. And then no one does it ever again. Like the golf analysis that I've referenced in the paper recently. They got a load of professional golfers and they got them all to swing and there was a best technique. There was a best technique for the golf swing, degrees of elbow away from the body and shoulder and the rest of it. And you know what? None of the pro golfers used it.
No,
There was a best technique, an average best technique, but none of the golfers used it once
I'm not surprised.
because it was an average. Because there
Yeah,
isn't an optimal, there is adaptable movements to get to a goal.
yeah,
And I was like, when you watch any sort of highlights of any activity, any sport, there's multiple solutions for it. And when people say, "Oh, that was really creative," you're like, "No, they just did the thing. It was creative because you hadn't seen other people do it very often. But if that's the solution that they come up with at the time, then it works."
yeah.
Bosby flop and Brill bend, high jump, just for
Cool. Thank
context.
you for clarifying because I just thought you were speaking another language then.
No, have you seen the high jump where they run and then they like go over backwards? Go over the bar
No.
backwards. No. So in high jump, they run around the floor and then they jump over a bar, but they run and they jump backwards over it. They call it the Fosby flop. But the first couple of people that did it was the Brill and Fosby. Bill, Brill Bend being like the less common name for it because Fosby flop is what most people call it because he won. I think it was the Olympics with the Fosby flop, but everyone else was jumping forwards over it. But the reason he decided to jump backwards over it wasn't because he thought it was more effective, but the sand pit over the bar was replaced with a foam pit. And they thought, actually, it's not going to hurt so much if I land on my back. I'm going to try landing on my back. And it turns out they could jump higher going backwards.
Mater.
Yeah. So the constraints changed, so the movement solutions adjusted, and now there's no optimal solution with the Fosby flop. It could be described as a Fosby flop because they're going backwards over a bar, but everyone does it slightly differently. Some people lead with one arm, some people lead with no arm, some people lead with their head, some people move their shoulders and hips at different times, some people jump like right close to the bar, some further away from the bar, and some people mistime their run up, so they have to adjust to the run up. And yeah, there's loads of variability in doing the Fosby flop. So it doesn't matter how,
That, that,
yeah,
that right there is the excitement when we shift away from the binary and we look at it. as is perceived.
What do you mean?
Well, when when you have that binary, like there is a right way, there is a wrong way. There is no variation. Variability does not exist, which is completely and utterly false because it just does. That is a cold hard fact for the those who love hard sciences. That is a very hard science. There is always going to be variability. That is measurable. That is incredibly clear
Hmm.
that there is variability. And once you can understand the variability, it almost makes things infinitely more complex, but also easier. At least from my experience of like, okay, cool. So there is like 150 different ways we could do this. What am I doing? How am I doing it right now? How is this working? Why am I getting very frustrated with the AI because it's randomly sprouting bollocks at me? Because it still will, because it's a tool and it's not perfect and can't be. Okay, this is why, because this is frustrating me. All right, I'm going to feed that back. This does not make sense because of this, because of, oh, I noticed that we've gone off topic and doing this now. Why is this? And that right there allows us to use the variability. And because the AI's tool is so good at auto completion and trying to find the patterns as fast as possible, it's a really cool way. And then we just do it ourselves because slowly we see that variability because we do.
Which I think relates to the, oh, I can't say focused conversation. Focused on what? Your
Mm.
focus is variable and dynamic with the environments that you're in. So where are you picking the start and stop of your measure of focus? Because believe it or not, no one stays focused.
So interesting that this reminds me of an experience I just had. So I have been sick for a while, and so my throat had kind of lost my voice. Very difficult to voice train because the breath is really important when adapting my voice. Because traditionally, feminine voice has more breath. Um, And so when I started up my sessions yesterday again for the first time, and I was like, I am exceptionally anxious about this because I have not practiced, not really, not done the practice that was assigned to me because I could barely talk. I've been thinking about it a lot, obviously. And it was really interesting to see my instructor's reaction to that. It was, okay. So what do you remember? Like, let's look at what you've got. Let's look at like what we've discussed so far and see what was there. And it was very interesting because I was like, oh yeah, this open quotient. Yeah, what does that mean? Like, what does open quotient mean to you? And it was like, interesting, cool, that's good. Yeah, that's interesting. And then we jumped straight into the very next thing, which was me actually using and putting it all together, all of the different disparate techniques all together into one. And it was like, oh, okay. And it was interesting because they responded with, well, you remembered lots of it. I appreciate why you were anxious, but you knew all of this stuff. I said, yeah, I know it, but I don't know how to do it. Was my feedback. I was like, I don't know how to do it, like in action. But just recapping it for me made me start thinking about it, which meant even though I wasn't actively doing the drills, basically, they're drills, doing the drills, I was actively thinking about it the entire time. And now my practice has turned from practice these drills, do these things, to, well, when you're out, speak in that voice. Try it. Do this. Just actually actively use the voice now. And I'm like, huh, cool. And they were like, I've noticed you're already doing it. Like you were saying about how you were doing a video and you were just playing with the position of the mouth, for example, just to see what happens to my voice and how the timbre changes. I was like, yeah, well, yeah, I was because I was intrigued and it was about all I could do at that point. Working within the constraints.
But that's what I suggested at the
Yeah, I know.
start. And it's
Yeah,
interesting that it's taken this long to get there, to actually
I
doing
know.
the thing.
Mm. I think it was after it was because I didn't, it was because my capability to do the like exercises weren't, it was no longer, I was constrained out of doing those exercises. I needed to find another way.
But even so, knowledge of and knowledge about are different.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
as you said right there, like, well, I know how, I just can't do. And the doing bit
Mm.
is the goal.
Yeah.
And I think the doing bit as the goal is what a lot of coaches, teachers, educators kind of forget sometimes. They feel
Mm.
they need to dump a load of information on you, load of intelligence, before you can act. And Mike Israetel, in a conversation with Greg Souders recently, was saying, "Oh, well, how do you teach someone that is new to jujitsu how to do jujitsu because they don't know jujitsu?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they do. You ask someone to try and get the other person on their bum, they will do lots of different things to try and do that. Will they be effective at it? Probably
No.
not if they're fighting someone that is more effective at it. But if you get two people that have never done jujitsu before and you give them the goal of put that person on their back, they will give loads of different solutions. They will try loads of different things. They don't need to know jujitsu to be able to do jujitsu if we define jujitsu as putting someone on their back and getting them into a submission, whatever the submission may be, a chokehold or threatening to do whatever. Like you don't need to add the labels. There isn't a loan of
Mm.
intelligence required for a person to behave. And so with you, I mean, I haven't done any of your training, but if I wanted to, I imagine I could try and alter the pitch of my voice. I mean, you do when you're talking. I can deliberately go low or higher. And if I speak higher, I can speak like this. Do I want to speak like this? Not all of the time, but I could try. And if I want
Mm.
to adjust it or adapt it, I can. But I don't know any of timbre. Is that the word you said? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a musical term. It's not the term being used, but yeah.
But you see what I mean?
Mm.
Give myself a goal, I can try and do it. Is it a goal I want to achieve? No. Is it a goal you want to achieve? Yes. So you practice towards that goal. The upfront lessons, for me, I don't feel are effective. Are they ineffective? No.
No.
Are they as effective? I don't think so. And that is the argument of the CLA. We don't think highly constrained practice is as effective as looser constrained practice, directing movements for self-organization towards a goal, not a movement
And
goal.
here's an interesting thing.
Hmm.
So I've had these highly constrained practices all this time. Didn't practice them once, really. I played around with it a little bit, just playing with it in day-to-day life. And then I got the assignment of like, you now have a voice, try using it.
You
And
started off with it.
and immediately I'm more likely and I practiced yesterday. And in fact I brought it into the house and was messing around with a friend and like sharing what I was learning with them.
Yep.
And it was easier for me to practice then than it was before because
You're
my
exploring.
my presumed like my assumption that I made is that there is a right way to do that exercise. I must do it right. That's how I was instructed,
I'm
which is
doing a
why I get
Churchill
an
nod here for
instructor.
those listening.
Yeah, there was a big Churchill nod. I was instructed on how to do it. Now I can't be instructed on crafting my voice because it's my voice. Now it's a try it. And I'm like, cool, I'll try it. When you're playing video games, read the lore in your voice. And I am naturally doing it. I'm naturally shifting between my traditional voice, the voice that I've had for many years, and a more feminized version of my voice. And it will get easier and easier as I go. because I just got to do it.
Because that's skill development.
No, it's not. No. No, there's only one way of doing it. Don't you know that? We should go back to the first bit of science that we had on it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Conscious.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm.
But yeah, so I will respond to this individual after our little chat. Is there anything else you wanted to add or discuss? Because I came in and sort of said I'm responding to this message, and then we spoke about this.
I
So
don't think so, no. I can't think of anything. I want to talk about the voice training, so I did that. That was fine. Yeah, it was an interesting
managed to
part of the
fit it in.
conversation.
Yeah. Right. Well, thanks for everyone listening to our little I don't want to say rant, exploration of language used. And we'll speak to you all next week. Bye.